You think you're better than us? Debra, the voice cut through the cafeteria like a blade. Every conversation died. 200 men turned to watch. Marcus Webb didn't look up from his tray. He'd been inside Stateville Correctional for exactly 4 hours, and he already knew this moment was coming. The big man standing over him, they called him Diesel, had arms like tree trunks and a reputation that preceded him like thunder before a storm. I asked you a question, old man. Habrig Marcus was 53. His hair had gone silver at the temples, and his hands, calloused from decades of something Diesel couldn't begin to imagine, rested calmly on either side of his untouched food. He wore the same orange jumpsuit as everyone else, but somehow it looked different on him. Cleaner. Pressed, even though that was impossible. I heard you, Marcus said quietly. His voice was deep, measured, the kind of voice that didn't need volume to carry weight. Diesel's jaw tightened. Around them, men began to gather. Some were eager for violence. Others just wanted to see the new guy put in his place. That's how it worked inside. Everyone had to know their place. Then answer me. Marcus finally looked up. His eyes were dark, calm, and utterly unafraid. Not the false bravado of a man pretending to be tough. Not the wild desperation of someone with nothing to lose. Just peace. The kind of peace that made Diesel's chest tighten with something he didn't recognize. No, Marcus said simply. I don't think I'm better than anyone. Burley, then why you sitting here like you own the place? Like you're somebody special? Marcus picked up his fork. I'm sitting here because this is where they told me to sit. I'm eating because I'm hungry. And I'm somebody's father, somebody's son, just like you. Avery, the cafeteria went silent. Even the guards stopped pretending to look away. Diesel's face flushed. He wasn't used to this. The new guys were supposed to cower, or fight, or beg. Not whatever this was. You got a smart mouth, old man. In here, that gets you hurt. Marcus set down his fork. He stood slowly, and though he was 3 inches shorter than Diesel and probably 60 pounds lighter, something about the way he carried himself made the bigger man take half a step back. I'm not here to make enemies, Marcus said. I'm not here to make friends. I'm just here to do my time with dignity. If you can't respect that, that's on you, not me. Brew. He picked up his tray and walked toward the dish return. The crowd parted like water. Diesel watched him go, fists clenched, face burning with humiliation. No one had ever dismissed him like that. No one had ever made him feel small without throwing a single punch. This ain't over, Diesel called after him. Marcus didn't turn around. It never was, he said quietly. If you believe in second chances and the power of truth, stay till the end, because what's coming will shake your soul. This man's story isn't what anyone expected. Not Diesel, not the guards, not even the warden who signed his transfer papers. By the time you reach Chapter 7, you'll understand why some men don't need to fight to win. Marcus Webb had been a free man 6 weeks ago. Not just free, respected, honored. The kind of man whose name opened doors in Chicago's South Side, whose word meant something in a world where words often meant nothing at all. He'd spent 27 years teaching history at Douglas High School. Not the sanitized version they printed in textbooks, but the real history. The painful history. The history of Emmett Till and Fred Hampton, of redlining and resistance, of people who looked like his students and fought for their right to exist with dignity. His classroom was always full. Even the kids who cut every other class showed up for Mr. Webb. He had a way of making the past feel urgent, relevant, alive. He never talked down to them, never gave up on them, even the ones everyone else had already written off, especially those ones. That's how he met Terrence. Terrence Williams was 16, brilliant, and angry. His father was gone. His mother worked 3 jobs and still couldn't keep the lights on. He was 2 credits behind and 1 mistake away from dropping out completely. But he could write. God, could he write. When Marcus read Terrence's essay on mass incarceration, he saw not just intelligence but fire, the kind that could forge something beautiful or burn everything down. Marcus became his mentor, helped him apply to college programs, wrote recommendation letters, drove him to campus visits, believed in him when Terrence didn't believe in himself. It worked. Terrence got into Northwestern on a full scholarship. Pre-law, he was going to be the first person in his family to graduate college. He was going to be someone. And then, one October night, everything shattered. The phone call came at 2:47 a.m. Marcus's wife, Grace, answered. He heard her gasp, heard the phone clatter against the nightstand, heard her say his name in a voice he'd never heard before. Marcus. Oh God, Marcus! Abe Terrence had been at a party on the west side. There was an argument. Someone pulled a gun. Terrence tried to run. He made it 40 feet before the bullet caught him in the back. He died on the sidewalk before the ambulance arrived. 17 years old, 3 months into his freshman year. Marcus didn't remember driving to the hospital, didn't remember identifying the body. Didn't remember Terrence's mother collapsing in his arms, screaming that her baby was gone, her beautiful baby was gone. He remembered the police officer's face, bored, tired, another dead black kid in a city full of them. Wrong place, wrong time, the officer said, like it was a weather report. Something inside Marcus broke that night. Not loudly, not dramatically, just broke. The shooter's name was Deshaun Porter, 22 years old, known gang affiliate, 3 priors. He was arrested within 48 hours. There were witnesses, clear evidence. It should have been open and shut. But Deshaun's cousin was dating a deputy prosecutor. Strings got pulled. Evidence got mishandled. Witnesses suddenly couldn't remember what they saw. 6 months later, Deshaun walked on a technicality. Marcus sat in the courtroom and watched it happen. Watched Terrence's mother weep. Watched Grace squeeze his hand so hard her knuckles went white. Watched Deshaun smile as he walked out of the courthouse, free. That's when Marcus made his decision. He didn't tell Grace. Didn't tell anyone. He just planned. Carefully. Methodically. The way he'd taught research methodology to his students for nearly 3 decades. He learned Deshaun's routine, where he worked, a cousin's auto shop, where he lived, a 3-flat on Kedzie, where he drank a corner bar that didn't ask questions. Marcus didn't own a gun, didn't want one. This wasn't about violence, this was about justice, about truth, about making sure someone, somewhere, understood that Terrence Williams mattered. 3 weeks after the trial ended, Marcus confronted Deshaun outside that bar. He brought no weapon. He brought evidence, photos of Terrence, the scholarship letter, the essay about dreams and second chances. He brought humanity. His name was Terrence, Marcus said. And you took him from us. Deshaun laughed. Actually laughed. Said something about survival, about the game, about how Marcus didn't understand how the streets worked. He was going to be a lawyer, Marcus said. He was going to help people, change things. And you, Ibrahim, and I'm still here, Deshaun interrupted. That's how it works, old man. The strong survive. Marcus stepped closer, not threatening, just present, bearing witness. No, he said quietly, the strong take responsibility. You're just a coward with a gun. He turned to walk away. Didn't see Deshaun's fist until it connected with his jaw. Marcus went down hard. His head cracked against the pavement. Blood filled his mouth. He heard shouting, felt hands grabbing him, dragging him. When the police arrived, Deshaun was standing over him, phone out, recording. Self-defense, Deshaun told the officers, his voice shaking with fake fear. He came at me, threatened me. I defended myself. There were 3 witnesses, all Deshaun's friends, all willing to lie. Marcus tried to explain, tried to tell the truth. But he was a middle-aged black man bleeding on the street, and Deshaun was young and had a documented victim history from the trial. The officers believed Deshaun. Marcus was arrested for assault. His lawyer was court-appointed, overworked, exhausted. Take the plea, she advised. Aggravated assault, 18 months. You'll do 12 with good behavior. Go to trial, and they might give you 5 years. But I didn't. I know, she said, and her eyes said she really did know. But that doesn't matter. Not here. Not for you. Grace begged him to fight, to appeal, to do something. But Marcus had taught history long enough to understand how the system worked, how it had always worked. He took the plea. Douglas High held a rally. His students created murals, signed petitions. Hundreds of people marched, demanding justice for Mr. Webb. It didn't matter. On a cold Tuesday in March, Marcus Webb, educator, mentor, husband, father of 2, walked into Stateville Correctional Facility. The man who killed Terrence Williams walked free. The man who demanded accountability went to prison. That's how Marcus ended up in a cafeteria facing a bully named Diesel, trying to hold on to the last shreds of his dignity in a place designed to strip it away. That first night, Lying on a thin mattress in a cell that smelled like despair and industrial cleaner, Marcus stared at the ceiling and thought about his father. His father had survived Jim Crow, Mississippi, had marched with Dr. King, had taught Marcus that dignity wasn't something someone could give you or take away, it was something you chose. They can take your freedom, his father used to say. They can take your comfort. They can take almost everything, but they can't take who you are, not unless you let them. Sebrew Marcus closed his eyes. He wouldn't let them. Whatever happened inside these walls, he would remain Marcus Webb. Teacher, truth-teller, man of principle, even if it killed him, especially if it killed him. The first week inside was a masterclass in humiliation. It started small. Someone accidentally knocked Marcus's breakfast tray out of his hands on the second day. Laughter echoed through the cafeteria as oatmeal splattered across his shoes. Marcus cleaned it up without a word, got a new tray, and sat down to eat cold toast. On day 3, his cell was tossed during a random inspection. His few possessions, a photo of Grace and their daughters, 3 paperback books, letters from former students, were scattered across the floor. One of the books had been torn. The photo had a boot print across Grace's face. Marcus carefully wiped it clean and taped the book's spine back together. By day 4, the whispers started. Teacher man, professor, thinks he's too good for us. Diesel had started the rumors, and they spread like wildfire. In prison, being different was dangerous. Being educated was suspicious. Being dignified was seen as arrogance. Marcus understood the psychology. He'd seen it in his classroom. Students who mocked the smart kids because knowledge reminded of everything they'd been denied. It was easier to tear down than to build up. Easier to mock dignity than to claim it for yourself. He didn't fight back. Fighting would prove Diesel right. Fighting would make him like everyone else in here, controlled by anger instead of principle. But God, it was hard. The worst part wasn't the harassment, it was the silence from the outside world. Grace visited once a week, every Sunday. She drove 3 hours from Chicago, went through metal detectors and pat-downs and suspicious glares from guards who treated her like she was the criminal. She sat across from him in a visiting room that smelled like sweat and desperation, and tried to smile. But Marcus could see the cost in her eyes, the exhaustion, the fear, the way her hands shook when she touched his through the scratched plexiglass barrier. "The girls ask about you every day," Grace said during the second visit. "Maya wants to know when you're coming to her piano recital. She doesn't understand why—" Her voice broke. Marcus watched his wife of 28 years struggle to hold back tears and felt something crack deeper inside his chest. Maya was 10, their younger daughter, the one who still believed her daddy could fix anything. How did you explain to a 10-year-old that the world wasn't fair, that good people got punished, that the system they'd taught her to trust had failed the man she loved most? "Tell her I'll be at the next one," Marcus said, even though they both knew it was a lie. He had 16 more months. Maya would have 3 more recitals before he got out. Grace nodded, tears streaming down her face now. "I'm trying to hold everything together, Marcus, the mortgage, the girls, work, but I'm so tired, and everyone keeps asking me what happened, and I have to explain that my husband, who never hurt anyone in his life, is in prison because—" She stopped, pressed her palm against the barrier. Marcus pressed his palm to the same spot. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Don't," Grace said fiercely. "Don't you dare apologize for demanding justice. Don't apologize for being a good man in a broken system." He brought up, but Marcus was apologizing. Not for confronting Deshawn, not for speaking truth. He was apologizing for not being there, for not being able to hold his wife when she cried, for missing Maya's recital, and their older daughter Jasmine's college applications and all the 1,000 small moments that made up a life. He was apologizing for being human. At night, when the prison went as quiet as it ever got, which wasn't quiet at all, just a different kind of noise, moans and coughs and the endless clanging of metal, Marcus would think about Terrence. He'd close his eyes and see the boy's face, not as it looked in the morgue, but alive, animated, the way Terrence looked when he finally understood a historical concept, when the pieces clicked together and his whole face lit up. Terrence had written his college essay about Frederick Douglass, about the power of literacy as resistance, about how education was the pathway from slavery to freedom. "Mr. Webb," Terrence had said, showing him the final draft, "you taught me that knowledge is power. That understanding where we come from helps us change where we're going. I don't know if I'll make it, but I'm gonna try. Because you believed in me first, Ibra Marcus had cried reading that essay. Happy tears, proud tears, the kind of tears teachers cry when they see a student transform from a scared kid into a young man with purpose. 6 months later, Terence was dead, and Marcus was the one in a cage. The injustice of it was suffocating. Some nights Marcus would lie awake and feel anger rise in his chest like bile. Hot, bitter, consuming. He'd imagine what he could have done differently. If he'd brought a weapon, if he'd actually hurt Deshaun the way Deshaun deserved to be hurt. But then he'd remember his father's words, remember why he became a teacher in the first place, remember that violence only fed the system that put him here. They want you to break, his father used to say. They want you to become the monster they already see when they look at your skin. Don't give them the satisfaction. So Marcus breathed. Counted to 10, to 20, to 100. He recited the Langston Hughes poems he'd taught for years. What happens to a dream deferred? He whispered the names of his students, all of them, even the ones from 20 years ago, said their names like a prayer. And eventually, the anger would recede. Not disappear, never disappear, but recede enough that he could close his eyes without seeing Deshaun's smirking face. Enough that he could survive another night. On the 8th day, Marcus was assigned to the prison library. It was a small room, poorly lit, with books that were mostly decades old and falling apart. The librarian was a 50-year-old white man named Connolly who'd been inside for 15 years on a fraud conviction. He was quiet, careful, and clearly surprised when Marcus walked in. "You're Webb," Connolly said. "It wasn't a question." "I am. Heard you were a teacher. Aubrey for 27 years. Abra Connolly studied him for a long moment. Then he gestured to the shelves. "Well, you'll do better than most here. Half these guys can't read above a 5th grade level. The other half don't care to. You'll be cataloging returns, shelving, and helping with requests. It's quiet work. Keeps you out of the yard if you want." Marcus nodded. Quiet work sounded like salvation. He spent the next 4 hours organizing books. It was meditative. Peaceful, even. He found a battered copy of The Souls of Black Folk and held it like an old friend. Found Invisible Man and Native Son, and felt a fierce pride that these books had survived in this place. Near the end of his shift, a young man came in. Early 20s, skinny, with eyes that darted around like a trapped animal. He approached the desk hesitantly. "Need something?" Connolly asked. I heard there's a GED program. I want to sign up." Connolly slid a form across the desk. "Fill this out." The young man picked up the pen, stared at the form. His hand trembled. Marcus watched him struggle with the first line, name, date of birth, facility ID, and recognized the shame in his shoulders. The young man could barely write. "You need help?" Marcus asked gently. The young man flinched. "I got it. Abra, I'm not judging, I'm offering." Their eyes met. The young man's were filled with defiance and desperation in equal measure. "I ain't stupid," he said. "Never said you were, but reading and writing are learned skills. Nothing to be ashamed of if you never had the chance to learn." Abra, something shifted in the young man's face. "You really a teacher?" "Seabriggy, I really am. Kibri, they say you in here for trying to kill someone." "Shebra fangs," Marcus smiled sadly. "They say a lot of things. Most of it's not true." "What's your name?" "Bricky Javon." "Bricker, nice to meet you, Javon. You want help with that form?" Bricky Javon hesitated, then nodded. Marcus spent the next 20 minutes helping him fill it out, pronouncing words, explaining abbreviations, never once making Javon feel small. By the end, Javon's shoulders had relaxed. "Why you helping me?" Javon asked. "Because someone helped me once," Marcus said, "and because you asked. That takes courage." Javon left with a completed form and something else, something Marcus recognized from years of teaching. Hope. That night, Diesel cornered him in the showers. Marcus was alone, which was a mistake. You were never supposed to be alone. But he'd wanted privacy. Just a few minutes without eyes on him, and he'd miscalculated. Diesel stepped into the shower room with 2 other men, big men, the kind who made violence look easy. "Heard you've been playing teacher in the library," Diesel said. Marcus kept washing, tried to stay calm even though his heart was hammering. "Just doing my job." "Abra, see, that's your problem. You think you got a job, like you're still some respected man, but you're not. You're just another convict, same as me. Time you learned that." Marcus turned off the water, reached for his towel. Diesel's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. I'm talking to you. Ibra. For the first time since arriving at Stateville, Marcus felt real fear, not for his pride, for his life. Let go, he said quietly. Make me. The two other men moved closer, blocking the exit. Marcus looked at Diesel. Really looked at him. Saw past the muscle and the meanness to the scared kid underneath. Diesel was maybe 25, covered in gang tattoos. Probably been in and out of jail since he was a teenager. Probably never had a Mr. Webb in his life. What do you want from me? Marcus asked. The question surprised Diesel. What? You've been coming at me for over a week, spreading rumors, getting in my face, trying to make me fight you. Why? What did I do to you? Diesel's grip tightened. You think you're better than us. Hey, bruh, I don't. I really don't. I think I'm a man who made a mistake and is paying for it. Same as you. Same as everyone here. Bree, then why you act like that? All calm and dignified? This place don't touch you? Because if I don't, Marcus said, I'll break. And I promise my wife and my daughters that I'm the same man who left. Not broken, not changed into something else. Still me. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Diesel let go. You're weird, old man, he said. But there was less hostility in his voice, less certainty. He left. His two friends followed. Marcus stood alone in the shower room, legs shaking, and allowed himself 3 minutes to fall apart. 3 minutes to cry, to rage, to acknowledge how close he'd come to something terrible. Then he dried his eyes, got dressed, and walked back to his cell with his head up. Because that's what dignity required, even when no one was watching. 2 weeks into his sentence, Marcus received a letter that changed everything. It came during mail call, mixed in with Grace's weekly update, and a card from Maya with crayon drawings of their family. The third envelope was different. Crisp white paper, typed address, official seal in the corner. Chicago Public Schools, Office of Community Relations. Marcus's hands trembled as he opened it. He'd been fired, of course. The day after his conviction, they'd terminated his contract. No severance, no pension after 27 years, just a form letter explaining that convicted felons couldn't work in schools. He expected this to be something about health insurance or final paperwork. Instead, he found a letter that made him sit down hard on his bunk. Dear Mr. Webb, my name is Alicia Thornton. I'm a senior at Douglas High School, and I was in your AP US history class 2 years ago. You probably don't remember me. I was quiet, sat in the back, barely spoke. But I remember you. I remember everything you taught us. When we heard what happened, most people didn't understand. They heard assault conviction and assumed the worst. But those of us who knew you, we knew something was wrong. Mr. Webb, we've been doing research, real research, the way you taught us. We filed Freedom of Information Act requests. We interviewed witnesses. We found inconsistencies in the police reports from the night you were arrested. We found 3 people who were at that bar who said you never threatened Deshaun Porter, who said he attacked you first, who said the cops ignored them when they tried to give statements. We found out that one of the officers who arrested you has 17 complaints for racial bias. We found out that Deshaun's cousin-in-law is now dating one of those officers. Mr. Webb, we think you were set up, and we're not going to stop until we prove it. I know you probably think we're just kids who don't understand how the system works. But you taught us that ordinary people can change history. That justice isn't something that just happens. It's something we have to fight for. You fought for Terrence. Now we're fighting for you. We've started a legal fund. We've contacted the Innocence Project and the ACLU. We've been meeting with a civil rights attorney named David Chu who's agreed to review your case pro bono. I don't know if any of this will work. But I do know that you once told us that silence is complicity. That when we see injustice, we have a moral obligation to speak up. You taught us to be brave, Mr. Webb. Now let us return the favor. With respect and determination, Alicia Thornton, Abreka. P.S. 47 of your former students have signed on to help. We call ourselves the Webb Warriors. We meet every Tuesday after school. We're not giving up. Marcus read the letter 3 times, then a 4th. His vision blurred with tears he couldn't stop. 47 students. Kids he'd taught years ago who had their own lives and problems and futures to worry about, and they were fighting for him. He thought about Alicia, tall girl, brilliant but painfully shy, who'd written an essay about Ida B. Wells that made him believe in the power of journalism. She'd been invisible in class, never raising her hand, but her written work was exceptional, and now she was leading a movement. He pressed the letter to his chest and let himself cry properly. Not from despair this time, from something that felt dangerously close to hope. Word spread quickly that Marcus had gotten mail. In prison, mail was currency, connection to the outside world, proof that someone still cared. Most men didn't get much. Some got nothing at all. At dinner that night, Javon, the young man from the library, slid into the seat across from Marcus. "You good?" Javon asked. "Yeah. Good news, actually. Abra, that's rare in here." "Abra," Team Marcus smiled. "It is." Abra, they ate in companionable silence for a while. Then Javon said, "I've been thinking about what you said, about reading being a learned skill." "Abra, yeah?" "Abra, where I want to learn, like really learn. I want to read real books, the kind you probably taught." Abra. Marcus set down his fork. "Why?" Javon shrugged, embarrassed. "I got a son. He's 3, lives with his mama. She won't let me see him because I'm in here. But I'm getting out in 14 months, and when I do, I want to be different. Want to be someone he can be proud of. Want to read him bedtime stories without stumbling over the words." "Abra." Something in Marcus's chest expanded. This was why he became a teacher. Not for the test scores or the college acceptances. For moments like this. For young men who wanted to be better for their children. "I'll teach you," Marcus said. "But I need something from you." Hebrew. Javon's eyes narrowed. "What?" "Hebrew, don't give up. Even when it's hard. Even when you feel stupid or frustrated. Keep showing up. Can you do that?" "Hebrew, yeah. Yeah, I can do that." They shook hands across the table. Diesel watched from 3 tables away, his expression unreadable. That night, lying in his cell, Marcus thought about his father again. His father had grown up in a sharecropping family in Mississippi, had picked cotton from age 6, hadn't learned to read until he was 21, when a freedom school volunteer taught him during the movement. His father used to say that education was the most dangerous weapon against oppression. That's why they'd made it illegal to teach enslaved people to read. That's why they'd underfunded black schools for generations. Because knowledge was power, and power terrified those who wanted to maintain control. "They tried to keep us ignorant," his father said once, "because they knew that once we could read, we'd read about our own history, our own strength, our own brilliance. And then they couldn't keep us down anymore." Ebro Marcus had spent his career giving young people that weapon. And now, even locked in a cage, even stripped of his freedom and reputation, he could still do it. He could still teach. The thought filled him with something he hadn't felt in weeks. Purpose. The next morning, Marcus approached Connolly in the library. "I want to start a class," he said. Connolly looked up from his cataloging. "What kind of class?" "Abro, reading, writing, history, whatever these men need. I know there's a GED program, but it's overcrowded and underfunded. I can help, I can do more. Abra, some of you be doing it for free. No extra privileges." "Abra, I don't want privileges. I want purpose." Ebru. Connolly studied him for a long moment. "You know this place will chew you up and spit you out if you're not careful. Men like you who care too much, they don't last long in here. Ebru, then I won't last long, but I'll make a difference while I'm here." Breaky. Connolly almost smiled. "You're either the bravest or the most foolish man I've ever met." "Cabra, can't it be both?" This time Connolly did smile. "I'll talk to the warden. Can't promise anything, but I'll ask." 3 days later, Marcus got approval to run an informal tutoring program in the library. 2 hours 3 times a week. Any inmate who wanted help with reading, writing, or GED prep could come. He expected maybe 5 people. 17 showed up the first night. They came cautiously, some embarrassed, others defiant, all of them hungry for something they couldn't quite name. Javon was there. So were men in their 20s, 40s, 60s, black, white, Latino, gang members and thieves and men who'd made terrible mistakes and men who'd been failed by every system designed to help them. Marcus stood in front of them and felt like himself for the first time since his arrest. "My name is Marcus Webb," he said, "and I'm here to teach. Not because I think I'm better than you, not because I'm trying to fix you, but because education is a right, not a privilege. And just because society gave up on you doesn't mean you have to give up on yourself." A man in the back, heavily tattooed, probably mid-30s, raised his hand. You really think reading some books is gonna change us? Gonna make the world treat us different? Hebrew, no, Marcus said honestly. The world might not change, but you will. You'll understand more, see more clearly, and understanding is the first step to power. The power to make better choices, to tell your own story instead of letting others tell it for you. Hebrew the man nodded slowly. So who wants to start? Marcus asked. Every hand went up. Over the next 2 weeks, something remarkable happened. The class grew, 20 men, then 25, then 30. They had to split into groups, beginners who could barely read, intermediate students working on GED prep, advanced students who wanted to discuss history and literature. Marcus worked with all of them. He taught phonics to a 40-year-old man who'd never finished 3rd grade. He led discussions about the Constitution with former drug dealers who'd never considered that they had rights. He helped men write letters to their children, choosing words carefully, trying to explain absence and regret and hope. It was exhausting. He'd finish his shifts and go to his cell barely able to move, but it was also exhilarating. He was teaching again, making a difference again, being Marcus Webb again. Word spread outside the library, too, about the teacher who'd been wrongly convicted, about the students fighting for his freedom, about the classes where men learned to see themselves differently. And then, one evening during the 3rd week, something happened that Marcus didn't expect. Diesel walked into the library. The room went quiet. Diesel's reputation preceded him: violence, intimidation, control. He'd made Marcus's first week hell. He represented everything about prison culture that destroyed dignity instead of preserving it. Diesel stood in the doorway, massive and menacing, looking uncomfortable. "This the reading class?" he asked. Marcus's heart pounded. This could go a dozen different ways: a challenge, a disruption, an attack. "It is," Marcus said calmly. "You want to join? Ibrahim, maybe?" Diesel shifted his weight. "I got a sister. She writes me letters, long ones. I can read okay, but I want to write her back. Real letters, not just a few words. She deserves better." Every man in the room was watching, waiting to see how Marcus would respond, waiting to see if he'd reject Diesel, humiliate him the way Diesel had tried to humiliate Marcus. Marcus pulled out a chair. "Sit down," he said. "Let's work on it together." Ibrahim Diesel sat, and in that moment something shifted in the air at Stateville Correctional, something small but significant. A man known for violence choosing vulnerability instead. A teacher offering grace to someone who'd offered him none. It was the beginning of something neither of them understood yet, but Marcus felt it in his bones. Hope wasn't just a letter from the outside anymore. It was here, in this room, in these men, in the possibility of change. 6 weeks into his sentence, Marcus received a visit that shook the entire prison. It started with a summons from the warden's office. Unusual and anxiety-inducing. Inmates didn't get called to see Warden Patricia Hayes unless something was very wrong, or, in rare cases, very right. Marcus walked through the corridors flanked by a guard, his mind racing through possibilities. Had something happened to Grace? To the girls? Had the legal challenge Alicia mentioned gotten him in trouble? When he entered the office, he found Warden Hayes behind her desk, a stern black woman in her late 50s, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing. But she wasn't alone. 3 other people sat in the office: a young Asian man in an expensive suit, a woman with a camera, and Alicia Thornton. Marcus stopped breathing. Alicia stood up, tears streaming down her face. "Mr. Webb, Ibrahim, Miss Thornton." He couldn't believe she was here, couldn't believe his student, his brilliant, quiet student, was standing in a prison warden's office. The man in the suit extended his hand. "Mr. Webb, I'm David Chu, civil rights attorney. And we need to talk about your case." "Obrook." Warden Hayes gestured for everyone to sit. Her expression was carefully neutral, but Marcus caught something in her eyes. Curiosity, maybe even concern. "Mr. Webb," she said, "I've been going over your file, your conviction, the circumstances that brought you here. And I've also been hearing about the work you're doing in the library." Hebrew Marcus nodded, unsure where this was going. "In 23 years as a corrections officer and warden, I've seen every type of inmate. The violent ones, the remorseful ones, the ones who game the system. And occasionally, very occasionally, I see someone who doesn't belong here at all." She opened a folder on her desk. "Your prison record is spotless. Not a single incident. You've been harassed, and you haven't retaliated. You've started an education program that has more men voluntarily attending than any program we've run in 5 years. Guards tell me you break up tensions before they escalate just by talking to people. Bruce, she looked up. You're either a saint, Mr. Webb, or you're exactly what your students claim you are. An innocent man who was railroaded by a corrupt system. David Chu leaned forward. Warden Hayes has agreed to let us present new evidence. Evidence that wasn't available during your trial. Marcus's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. What evidence? Alicia pulled out a tablet. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. We found the bar's security footage, Mr. Webb. The police said there wasn't any. They lied. Bruce, she turned the tablet toward him. On the screen was grainy but clear footage from inside the bar, time-stamped the night of his arrest. Marcus watched himself approach Deshaun Porter outside the bar's entrance, visible through the front windows. Watched himself hold up photos, Terrence's photos. Watched the conversation, which looked intense but not threatening. Then watched Deshaun laugh, watched himself turn to leave, and watched Deshaun sucker punch him from behind. Marcus went down like a stone. The footage showed him lying motionless while Deshaun and his friends stood over him, one of them pulling out a phone. Then the police arrived, and the angle shifted, but it was clear, brutally, undeniably clear, that Marcus had been the victim, not the aggressor. How? Marcus whispered. The police said Ebert, the owner of the bar, gave the footage to police that night, David said. But it never made it into evidence. We tracked down the owner, man named Eddie Ramos. He was furious. Said he handed a USB drive directly to Officer Garrett Mullins, the responding officer, and was told it would be logged as evidence. Berkshire Mullins, Marcus said slowly, the officer with 17 bias complaints. April 19 now, Alicia added quietly. We filed 2 more based on witness statements we collected. David continued. Mullins never logged the footage, but Ramos kept a backup copy. He'd forgotten about it until we came asking questions. When he found out you went to prison, he was horrified. He's willing to testify. Marcus couldn't speak. Couldn't process what he was hearing. There's more, Alicia said. She was crying openly now, but her voice never wavered. We found 5 witnesses who saw what happened. 5 people who tried to give statements that night and were turned away by police. One of them recorded the aftermath on his phone. You unconscious, bleeding from the head, while Deshaun Porter stood there laughing. Bruce, she pulled up another video. This one showed exactly what she described. Marcus barely recognized himself, motionless on the pavement, blood pooling under his head, while Deshaun's voice carried clearly, "Stupid old man thought he could come at me." Why didn't this come out during the trial? Marcus asked. Your public defender never investigated, David said bluntly. She encouraged you to take the plea, and you did. This is a textbook case of inadequate counsel combined with police misconduct. Warden Hayes spoke again. Mr. Chu has filed a motion to vacate your conviction. He's also filing a federal civil rights lawsuit against the Chicago Police Department, specifically Officer Mullins and the department's evidence handling procedures. Marcus looked at Alicia. How did you do this? You taught us how, she said simply. You taught us to question narratives, to look for primary sources, to follow the evidence wherever it leads. We did exactly what you would have done. The Webb Warriors, Marcus said, remembering her letter. Alicia smiled through her tears. We're up to 93 members now, current students, alumni, parents, teachers, even some people who never met you but heard your story and wanted to help. We've raised $42,000 for the legal fund. People are paying attention, Mr. Webb. The woman with the camera finally spoke. I'm Janet Rodriguez from Chicago Public Media. We're running a documentary series on wrongful convictions and police misconduct. Your case is going to be featured. With your permission. Marcus couldn't find words. 6 weeks ago, he'd been drowning in despair. Now this. When? He managed to ask. When will the judge rule on the motion? Our hearing is in 3 weeks, David said. I can't make promises. The system moves slowly, and there are powerful people who don't want to admit they got it wrong. But Mr. Webb, this footage changes everything. You should never have been convicted. After the meeting ended and his visitors left, Marcus was escorted back to his cell. His mind was reeling, heart pounding with something that felt too fragile to call hope, but too powerful to ignore. He sat on his bunk and stared at his hands, teacher's hands, calloused from years of writing on chalkboards. Gentle hands that had never struck anyone in violence. These were the hands that had been cuffed and locked away. These were the hands that might soon be free. Word of the meeting spread through the prison with supernatural speed. By dinner, everyone knew something big was happening with Marcus Webb. In the cafeteria, men approached him differently now, not with the suspicion of his first weeks, but with something that looked like respect. Even the guards seemed to watch him with new eyes. Diesel sat down across from him without asking. "Heard you might be getting out," Diesel said. "Maybe, nothing's certain. Abra, but they got proof you didn't do it." Ebra Marcus nodded. Diesel was quiet for a long moment, picking at his food. Then he said, "That mean the system really is rigged? Like you been teaching us?" "Ibriki, it's complicated," Marcus said carefully. "The system can work. It just doesn't always work fairly, especially not for people who look like us." "Abri. That's what my sister says. She's studying criminal justice at community college, wants to be a lawyer, help people like us." Diesel looked up. "I never told nobody that before. Thought they'd think I was soft. Abrook, wanting better for your family isn't soft. It's strong." Abrook Diesel nodded. "Mr. Webb, I gotta tell you something. I was wrong about you. When you came in, all proper and dignified, I thought you were trying to be better than us. But you weren't. You were just being yourself, not letting this place change you." "Ebrew, we all have a choice," Marcus said, "about who we become in here." "Abri, yeah, but most of us made our choices a long time ago. Did things we can't undo. You, though, you didn't do nothing wrong and you still ended up here. That's what makes it so messed up." Marcus thought about this. "You know what I've learned, being in here? Brett, what? Abraham, most of the men I've met made mistakes. Some terrible mistakes. They're people who grew up in systems designed to fail them. Poor schools, no opportunities, neighborhoods that looked like war zones. They made bad choices, yes. But those choices didn't happen in a vacuum." Abri Diesel's jaw tightened. "You saying we ain't responsible?" "Abri, no. I'm saying responsibility is complicated. You're responsible for your actions, but society is responsible for the conditions that shape those actions. Both things can be true." "Mr. Webb," Diesel said quietly, "if you get out, don't forget about us. The ones who are really guilty. We need teachers, too." Marcus reached across the table and gripped Diesel's shoulder. "I won't forget. I promise you that." That evening's class was different. 37 men showed up, the biggest attendance yet. They'd heard about the evidence, about the possibility of Marcus's release, and they came to show support the only way they knew how. By showing up, by learning, by honoring the man who'd seen their humanity when everyone else saw only their crimes. Marcus stood before them, overwhelmed. "I don't know what's going to happen," he told them honestly. "The hearing is in 3 weeks. The judge could rule in my favor, could rule against me. But whatever happens, I want you to know something." He paused, collecting his thoughts. "When I came here, I thought my life was over, thought I'd lost everything that mattered, my freedom, my reputation, my purpose. But these past 6 weeks, you've given me something I didn't expect. You've reminded me why I became a teacher. Not to create test scores or college admissions, to help people see their own potential, to witness people becoming more than the world told them they could be." A man in the front row, an older white inmate named Patterson, who'd been working on basic literacy, raised his hand. "Mr. Webb, I'm 62 years old, been in and out of prison since I was 19, never learned to read proper because I was ashamed, too proud to ask for help. You're the first person who didn't make me feel stupid for not knowing. You're the first person who treated me like I was worth teaching." His voice cracked. "Whether you get out or not, you changed my life, changed all our lives. We want you to know that." Abru, man in the room, nodded. Marcus had to turn away for a moment, overcome with emotion. These men, society's cast-offs, the forgotten and condemned, were showing him more grace than the system that put him here. "Then let's make tonight count," Marcus said, turning back. "Let's learn. Let's grow. Let's prove that no matter where we are or what we've done, we can still become better. Because that's what dignity is. That's what redemption looks like." They worked for 2 hours. Men sounding out words, writing sentences, discussing history and philosophy and what it meant to be human in a place designed to dehumanize. And in that library, in that prison, something beautiful happened. Learning became resistance. Education became freedom. and a group of convicted criminals became students again, not of crime or survival, but of hope. Later that night, alone in his cell, Marcus pulled out Alicia's letter and read it again. "You taught us to be brave, Mr. Webb. Now let us return the favor." He thought about his students, 93 of them now, fighting for him on the outside. Thought about the 37 men learning in his class, fighting for themselves on the inside. Thought about Terrence, whose death had set all of this in motion. "I hope you see this," Marcus whispered to the memory of the boy who'd never become a lawyer. "I hope you know that your life mattered, that it changed things, changed me." He closed his eyes and allowed himself, for the first time in 6 weeks, to imagine freedom. Not just physical freedom, but freedom from the anger that had consumed him after Terrence's death. Freedom from the bitterness that came from injustice. Freedom from the hatred that could have destroyed him. He wasn't there yet. The anger still lived in his chest, hot and bitter, but it was smaller now, manageable, no longer controlling him, because he'd found purpose again, not in revenge, not in rage, in teaching, in truth, in the stubborn, beautiful belief that one person could still make a difference, even from inside a cage, especially from inside a cage. The night before the hearing, Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of 200 men trying to find peace in a place that offered none. Someone was crying 3 cells down. Someone else was praying in Spanish. The guards' boots echoed on concrete during rounds. Tomorrow, a judge would decide his fate. Tomorrow, the truth would either set him free or condemn him to 14 more months of this. Marcus thought about Grace, about his daughters, about walking through his front door, a free man. The thought was almost painful in its intensity, so close he could taste it, yet still impossibly far away. Around 2 a.m., he heard footsteps approaching his cell, not the rhythmic pace of a guard, but something hesitant, cautious. "Mr. Webb?" It was Javon's voice, barely a whisper. Marcus sat up. "Yeah? Hey, Brooke, he can't sleep either? Hey, Bruskano. Hey, bro, see you scared?" Marcus could have lying, then decided Javon deserved honesty. Terrified, she brought there was a pause. Then Javon said, "I've been practicing my reading, got through a whole chapter of that book you gave me. The autobiography of Malcolm X. It's hard, but I'm getting it." That's good, Javon. Real good. There's this part where Malcolm talks about reading in prison, how it transformed him, made him into who he became. Javon's voice was thick with emotion. "That's what you did for us, Mr. Webb. You transformed us. Whatever happens tomorrow, you need to know that." Marcus gripped the edge of his bunk, throat tight. "Thank you." Nah, man, thank you. When I get out, when I see my son, I'm gonna tell him about you. Gonna tell him about the teacher who never gave up, who showed us we were worth something. After Javon left, Marcus finally cried. Not from fear or anger or despair, from gratitude, from the strange, unexpected beauty of finding connection in the darkest place. He fell asleep just before dawn and dreamed of Terrence. The courthouse was in downtown Chicago, a 30-minute drive from Stateville. Marcus rode in a transport van, shackled at the wrists and ankles, watching the city pass by through reinforced windows. He'd forgotten how beautiful the world was. Trees in full spring bloom, people walking dogs, children laughing on their way to school. Normal life continuing without him, indifferent to his suffering. The van pulled into the courthouse garage. Marcus was processed through security, his shackles swapped for ones that allowed him to walk but reminded everyone he was still property of the state. David Chu met him outside the courtroom. The lawyer looked tired but determined. "How do you feel?" David asked. "Like my entire life is about to be decided by someone who's never met me." "That's because it is." David gripped his shoulder. "But we have the truth on our side. The evidence is overwhelming. Judge Morrison is fair from what I hear. She won't ignore facts. And if she does, then we appeal, we keep fighting. But Marcus, I need you to prepare yourself that even with everything we have, this might not go our way today. The system protects itself. Admitting they got it wrong means admitting liability, lawsuits, embarrassment. Some judges would rather maintain a wrongful conviction than open that door." Marcus nodded. He'd taught history long enough to know how institutions worked. Self-preservation always came before justice. "Whatever happens," Marcus said, "I want you to know I'm grateful. You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did." That's what the law is supposed to be for, protecting people from injustice. When it fails at that, we've all failed. The courtroom was packed. Marcus saw Grace in the front row, flanked by both their daughters. Maya, his 10-year-old, had tears streaming down her face the moment she saw him in shackles. Jasmine, 18 and trying to be strong, gripped her mother's hand so hard her knuckles were white. Behind them sat rows of students, not just the web warriors, but dozens more. Former students, some now in their 20s and 30s, who'd taken time off work to be here. Teachers from Douglas High, community members, people who believed in him. On the other side of the courtroom sat representatives from the Chicago Police Department and the prosecutor's office. They looked grim, prepared for a fight. And in the middle, elevated above everyone, sat Judge Patricia Morrison, a white woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a reputation for being tough but fair. She reviewed the documents in front of her for what felt like an eternity. Then she looked up. "This court is in session. We're here for a motion to vacate the conviction of Marcus Webb, currently serving an 18-month sentence for aggravated assault. Mr. Chu, you may present your argument." Ibrahim David stood. For the next 40 minutes, he systematically destroyed the original case. He presented the security footage, which showed clearly that Marcus had been the victim of an unprovoked attack. He called Eddie Ramos, the bar owner, who testified that he'd given the footage to police and was told it would be logged as evidence. He called 3 witnesses who'd tried to give statements that night and were turned away. He presented records showing Officer Mullins his history of bias complaints and misconduct, showed the connection between Mullins and Deshaun Porter's cousin-in-law, built a picture of corruption and negligence so clear that even the prosecutors looked uncomfortable. Then he called Alicia Thornton to the stand. She walked up with her head held high, and Marcus felt a surge of pride so intense it hurt. "Miss Thornton," David said, "can you explain how you became involved in this case?" "Ebrick. Mr. Webb was my teacher," Alicia said. Her voice was steady. "2 years ago I was barely passing, barely trying. I didn't think education mattered. Didn't think I mattered. Mr. Webb saw something in me I didn't see in myself. He pushed me to think critically, to question everything, to never accept injustice as inevitable." She looked directly at the judge. "When he was convicted, I knew something was wrong. Not because I'm naive about the legal system, but because I know Marcus Webb. He spent 27 years teaching us to solve problems with words, not violence, to seek truth, not revenge. The idea that he would attack someone was impossible to believe. So what did you do?" I used the skills he taught me: research, investigation, critical thinking. I filed Freedom of Information Act requests. I tracked down witnesses. I refused to accept the official narrative when the facts didn't support it. That's quite remarkable for a high school student. Alicia smiled slightly. Mr. Webb always said ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they refuse to be silent. I'm just proving he was right. The prosecution fought back, but their arguments were weak. They claimed the new evidence wasn't reliable, that the witnesses were biased, that Marcus's good behavior in prison didn't erase his conviction. But they couldn't explain why the security footage was never logged, couldn't explain why witnesses were turned away, couldn't explain Officer Mullins's involvement. Finally, Judge Morrison raised her hand. "I've heard enough. I'm going to take a 30-minute recess to review the evidence, and then I'll issue my ruling." Those 30 minutes felt like 30 years. Marcus sat at the defense table, hands folded, trying to breathe. Grace was crying silently behind him. He wanted to turn around, to hold her, to tell her it would be okay, but he was still in shackles, still technically a prisoner, still at the mercy of a system that had already failed him once. David leaned over. "No matter what happens, you did everything right. You stayed dignified, kept your integrity. That matters." "Brucka does it?" Marcus asked quietly. "If I go back to that cell tonight, does dignity matter?" Yes," David said firmly. "Because dignity is what you have when everything else is taken away. And no one, not the police, not the courts, not anyone, can take that from you unless you let them." Marcus thought about Diesel, about Javon, about all the men in his class who were learning to reclaim their dignity one word at a time. Maybe David was right. Maybe dignity was enough. Judge Morrison returned. The courtroom fell silent. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat, loud and frantic in his ears. I've reviewed the evidence presented today, Judge Morrison said, and I'm troubled, deeply troubled. Marcus's stomach dropped. The video evidence is clear and unambiguous. Marcus Webb did not initiate violence. He was the victim of an unprovoked assault. Furthermore, the failure of the Chicago Police Department to properly log and present this evidence represents, at minimum, gross negligence. At worst, it represents a deliberate attempt to secure a conviction against an innocent man. She looked directly at Marcus. Mr. Webb, you should never have been convicted. The evidence against you was fabricated through witness coercion and manipulation. The evidence in your favor was deliberately suppressed. This represents a fundamental failure of our justice system. Tears streamed down Marcus's face. However, Judge Morrison continued, and Marcus's heart stopped, I cannot simply release you today. Procedure requires that I refer this case back to the prosecutor's office. They will need to decide whether to retry you, which, given the evidence, would be unconscionable, or to dismiss the charges entirely. That process will take a minimum of 2 weeks. Grace gasped behind him. 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks in prison, knowing he was innocent, knowing the truth was out, but still caged. That said, Judge Morrison added, I am ordering your immediate release on your own recognizance pending the prosecutor's decision. Mr. Webb, as of this moment, you are a free man. Bailiff, remove his restraints. The courtroom erupted. Students cheered. Grace sobbed. Jasmine and Maya were on their feet, crying and laughing simultaneously. Even some of the court officers looked relieved. The bailiff approached Marcus with keys. The shackles fell away from his wrists, then his ankles. The metal clattered on the floor, and Marcus stood there, unbound, unable to process what was happening. Mr. Webb, Judge Morrison said, and her voice was gentler now, I cannot give you back the time you lost. I cannot undo the injustice you suffered. But I can tell you this. Your conduct throughout this ordeal has been extraordinary. You maintained your dignity in a place designed to strip it away. You educated men who'd been written off by society. You proved that character isn't what you do when everything is easy. It's what you do when everything is impossible. She nodded to him. You're dismissed. Go home to your family. Marcus turned around, and Grace was there, running toward him. He caught her in his arms, and they both collapsed, holding each other, sobbing, shaking with relief and joy and the overwhelming weight of survival. His daughters wrapped around them both. Maya was crying so hard she couldn't speak, just clutching his jumpsuit and repeating, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy! Jasmine pressed her forehead to his shoulder and whispered, We knew. We always knew you didn't do it. Alicia approached, tears streaming down her face. Marcus pulled away from his family long enough to embrace his student, this brilliant, brave young woman who'd refused to accept injustice. You did this, he told her. You saved me. No, Alicia said, you saved yourself by being who you are. We just made sure people saw the truth. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. News cameras, reporters, community members. Someone had organized a celebration, as if they'd known the outcome would be favorable. Marcus stood on the courthouse steps, still in his orange jumpsuit, surrounded by everyone he loved, and faced the cameras. I want to say something, he told the reporters. The crowd quieted. 6 weeks ago, I entered Stateville Correctional Facility an innocent man. I left today the same way, innocent, but changed. I met men inside who society has thrown away. Men who made mistakes, yes, but who are still human, still capable of growth and learning and redemption. His voice grew stronger. My case proves what the black community has known for generations, that the justice system doesn't always serve justice, that police misconduct happens, that innocent people go to prison while guilty people walk free. But my case also proves something else, that ordinary people, when they refuse to be silent, can change the world. He looked at his students. These young people fought for me when the system failed me. They used the tools I taught them, critical thinking, research, courage, to expose the truth. They are the future. They are the change. A reporter called out, Mr. Webb, are you angry? Do you want revenge against the people who put you in prison? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering. Was he angry? God, yes. A white-hot fury lived in his chest every time he thought about Deshaun Porter walking free while he'd been caged, every time he thought about Officer Mullins deliberately destroying evidence. Every time he thought about his daughters crying themselves to sleep because their father was in prison. But revenge? No. I'm angry, Marcus said honestly. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. But anger isn't the same as hatred, and revenge isn't the same as justice. I want accountability. I want the system to change so this doesn't happen to anyone else. But I don't want to become the kind of person who lets bitterness consume him. Hebrew thought about his father, about dignity, about the choice every person faces when the world breaks them. I want to go home, Marcus said simply. I want to hold my wife, read bedtime stories to my daughter, help my other daughter with her college applications, and then I want to go back to teaching. Because education, real education, the kind that makes people think and question and grow, that's how we change things. That's how we build the world we deserve. He smiled, and it was genuine. That's my revenge. Living well, teaching better, refusing to let injustice make me into something I'm not. The crowd applauded. Marcus took Grace's hand, and together they walked down the courthouse steps, toward home, toward healing, toward whatever came next. Marcus stood in his own kitchen. His kitchen, with its worn countertops and the coffee maker Grace had bought 10 years ago that still worked perfectly, and couldn't quite believe he was home. It was 9 p.m. He'd been processed out of Stateville, driven home by Grace and the girls, and walked through his front door to find it exactly as he'd left it. His reading chair, his bookshelves, the photos on the wall chronicling 28 years of marriage and 2 daughters growing up. Everything was the same. Everything was different. You want something to eat? Grace asked. She'd been hovering since they got home, touching his arm every few minutes like she needed to confirm he was real. I'm okay. Marcus couldn't eat. His stomach was twisted with too many emotions to process. Maya appeared in the doorway, clutching a stuffed animal she hadn't carried around since she was 6. Daddy? Can you tuck me in? Marcus's throat closed up. Of course, baby girl. He followed her upstairs to her room, her pink walls covered in piano recital certificates and drawings, and a new poster that read, Free Mr. Webb in rainbow letters. She climbed into bed, and Marcus sat on the edge, stroking her hair the way he used to when she was small. I missed you so much, Maya whispered. I missed you too, every single day. Abrook kids at school said you were a criminal, said you hurt someone. I knew they were lying. I knew you'd never hurt anybody. Marcus pulled her close. Sometimes the world gets things wrong, sweetheart. Sometimes good people get blamed for things they didn't do. But the truth has a way of coming out eventually. Miss Alicia and the big kids made sure it came out. They were so cool, Daddy. They had meetings and made signs and everything. They were very cool, Marcus agreed. They reminded me that young people can change the world. Maya yawned. Will you read to me, like you used to? Marcus grabbed a book from her shelf, A Wrinkle in Time, and read until her breathing deepened and she fell asleep. He sat there for another 10 minutes, just watching her, overwhelmed by the simple miracle of being able to be here. This was what they'd tried to take from him. Not just his freedom, but these moments, this love, this family. Downstairs, Jasmine was waiting with Grace. His older daughter looked so grown up now, so much older than she had 6 weeks ago. I deferred my college applications, Jasmine said without preamble. I was going to take a gap year to help Mom and Maya if you didn't get out. Jasmine, don't. Her voice was fierce. Don't tell me. You've spent my whole life telling me to stand up for what's right, to fight for the people I love. That's what I was doing. Marcus pulled her into a hug. You're so much like your mother, strong, stubborn, brilliant. I get the stubborn from you, Jasmine said into his shoulder. They sat together on the couch, the 3 of them, Grace in the middle holding both her husband's and daughter's hands, and talked late into the night, about the trial, about the students, about what came next. David Chu thinks the prosecutor will dismiss the charges within the week, Marcus said. They can't risk going to trial with that video evidence. It would be career suicide. And then what? Grace asked. Do we sue? Do we go after Mullins and the department? David wants to. Says it's an open and shut civil rights case. Could be significant damages. But? Grace knew him too well. Marcus sighed. But I'm tired, Grace. I'm so tired. I want to heal. I want to teach. I want to be here with you and the girls. A lawsuit means years of legal battles, depositions, reliving trauma. I don't know if I have that in me. Grace squeezed his hand. Then we don't do it, or we do it later, when you're ready. Nobody gets to tell you how to process this, Marcus, not even me. The students want justice, Jasmine added. They're talking about organizing protests, demanding Mullins be fired, pushing for police reform. Good, Marcus said. That's good, they should do, but they don't need me to lead it. They've already proven they can change things on their own. The next morning, Marcus woke up in his own bed for the first time in 6 weeks. Grace was already awake, watching him. Morning, she whispered. Morning. Abrily, you were talking in your sleep about Terrence. Marcus sat up, scrubbing his face. I dream about him a lot. About what happened, what could have been different. Marcus, what happened to Terrence wasn't your fault. I know. Logically, I know. But I can't help thinking. If I hadn't confronted Deshawn, if I'd just let it go, then Deshawn would have gotten away with murder without anyone even trying to hold him accountable. And you wouldn't be you. You'd be someone who saw injustice and looked away. Marcus nodded, but the guilt still sat heavy in his chest. His phone rang. David Chu. Marcus, I have news. The prosecutor's office just announced they're dropping all charges. It's over. You're officially cleared. Marcus closed his eyes. Thank God. There's more. Officer Mullen suspended pending an internal investigation. And the Chicago Police Department is facing federal scrutiny over their evidence handling procedures. Your case opened a door, Marcus. There might be dozens, maybe hundreds of other cases where evidence was mishandled or suppressed. Good. That's good. The media wants interviews. Everyone wants to talk to you. CNN, local news, newspapers. You're the story of the week. Marcus thought about this. Can I ask you something, David? Of course. What happens to the men I left behind at Stateville? The ones in my class? Do they get this attention? Does anyone care about their stories? David was quiet for a moment. Probably not. Not the way they care about yours. That's what I thought. Marcus made a decision. I'll do one interview. One. And I'm using it to talk about them. About the men society has thrown away. About why we need education in prisons, rehabilitation instead of just punishment. Can you arrange that? I can arrange that. 3 days later, Marcus sat across from a reporter named Sarah Chen in his living room. The web warriors had helped prepare the house, cleaning and organizing, making sure everything looked dignified. Sarah was thoughtful, prepared, clearly genuinely interested in his story. Mr. Webb, you've been through an incredible ordeal. How does it feel to be free? Surreal, Marcus answered honestly. Part of me keeps waiting to wake up back in that cell, but I'm grateful. Grateful to my students, to my lawyer, to everyone who fought for me. You maintained an education program while you were incarcerated. Why? Because teaching is who I am. Not just what I do, but who I am at my core. And because I met men inside who were hungry for something more than what prison was offering them. They wanted to learn, to grow, to be seen as human beings instead of just their worst mistakes. Sarah leaned forward. Do you think the justice system is fundamentally broken? Marcus considered carefully. I think the justice system reflects the society that created it. And our society has deep inequalities, in wealth, in opportunity, in how we treat people based on their race and class. The system works fine for some people. For others, like me, like Terrence Williams, like the men I met inside, it fails catastrophically. What needs to change? Everything, Marcus said. But if I had to prioritize? Police accountability, real consequences for misconduct, better funding for public defenders so people aren't pressured into pleas they shouldn't take. Educational programs in prisons. Rehabilitation, not just warehousing. And most importantly, we need to change how we see people who've been incarcerated. They're not monsters. They're human beings who made mistakes or, in many cases, were failed by every system that was supposed to help them. You could be angry. You could be calling for Officer Mullins's head, for massive lawsuits. But you're not. Why? Marcus smiled slightly. Oh, I'm angry. Make no mistake about that. But anger without purpose is just noise. I'm choosing to channel mine into change, into teaching, into making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. That's remarkably gracious. It's survival, Marcus said. Bitterness would eat me alive. Grace and dignity are how I stay whole," and went viral. Within hours, Marcus's story was everywhere. Social media exploded with support. Hashtag Justice for Webb trended nationally. Calls for police reform intensified. The Chicago Police Department's Internal Affairs Division announced they were reviewing 17 other cases where Officer Mullins had been involved. But what surprised Marcus most was the mail. Letters started arriving. Dozens, then hundreds. From formerly incarcerated people who'd never gotten their justice. From families of inmates. From teachers who'd lost jobs unfairly. From people who saw their own struggles reflected in his story. And from his former students at Stateville. Javon wrote, "Abrick, Mr. Webb, I heard you got out. We all celebrated in the library. Connolly got us donuts. I finished that Malcolm X book. It took me 3 weeks, but I did it. I'm in a different class now with a different teacher, but it's not the same. You saw us as students, not inmates. You changed how I see myself. When I get out in 12 months, I'm getting my GED. I'm going to community college. I'm going to be someone my son can be proud of. Thank you for showing me that's possible." Diesel wrote too, "Abrick, they moved me to a different block so I can't take your class no more. But I wanted you to know I've been practicing my writing like you taught me. I wrote my sister a real letter, 3 pages long. She cried when she got it, said it was the best thing I ever gave her. Mr. Webb, you're right about dignity. It's a choice. I'm choosing it now. Thank you for teaching me that." Marcus read every letter, cried over most of them. These men, these forgotten men, were continuing the work they'd started together. They were choosing growth over stagnation, hope over despair. That's when Marcus knew what he had to do. He called David Chu. "I want to sue," Marcus said. "Not for money. I want accountability. I want Mullins fired. I want policies changed. And I want any settlement money to go toward funding educational programs in prisons." "Ebrook, Marcus, that could take years." "Ebrew, I know. But it's worth even for Diesel, for every man who's locked up and told he's worthless. They deserve better, and I'm going to fight until they get it." Ibrahim David was quiet. Then, "I'll draft the complaint. Let's change things." 2 weeks after his release, Marcus received a call from the principal of Douglas High. "Marcus, the board voted. We want you back. Full reinstatement with back pay, if you're ready." Marcus looked around his living room at Grace, who was watching him hopefully. At the stack of letters from inmates. At the photo of Terrence on his bookshelf. "I'm ready," he said, "but I need to add something to my contract." "Brewery, what's that?" "I want to develop a program where my students can do outreach at Stateville, education partnerships, mentorship, showing incarcerated men that young people believe in second chances." Lutz, that's ambitious. Brucker education always is. But it's how we change the world, one person at a time. "Ibrookie, I'll take it to the board." But Marcus, welcome home. On a Saturday afternoon, exactly 3 weeks after his release, Marcus stood in front of Douglas High School. The building looked the same. Red brick, American flag out front, the mural his students had painted 5 years ago still visible on the east wall. But he was different. Transformed by 6 weeks in hell that had somehow, impossibly, made him stronger. The Webb Warriors were waiting inside. They'd organized a welcome-back celebration. 93 students, current and former, plus teachers and community members. They'd made a banner, "Welcome home, Mr. Webb." When Marcus walked in, they cheered. Alicia approached, professional now, confident in a way she hadn't been 2 years ago. "Mr. Webb, we wanted to give you this." She handed him a bound book. On the cover, "The Webb Warriors, a student movement for justice. We documented everything," she explained. "The investigation, the evidence we found, the legal process. We're using it as a teaching tool, showing other students how to fight injustice, how to use education as resistance." Marcus paged through it, overwhelmed. His students had created something beautiful from something terrible. They'd turned his suffering into a blueprint for change. "This is incredible," he said. "You taught us how," Alicia said simply. "Now we're teaching others. The movement is spreading, Mr. Webb. Students in 5 other cities have started their own justice projects. We're calling it the Webb Warrior Network." Marcus couldn't speak, could only embrace this remarkable young woman who'd saved his life. Around the room, faces, young and old, black and white and brown, all united by belief in justice, looked at him with hope. "So what now?" someone called out. "What's next?" Marcus smiled. "Now we get back to work. We learn. We teach. We fight for people who can't fight for themselves. We refuse to accept injustice as inevitable, and we prove every single day that education is the most powerful weapon we have against oppression. Bro, he raised his voice. I went to prison an innocent man. I came out the same. But I also came out with a mission to make sure every person in this country has access to education, to dignity, to justice. That's what we're going to do. Together. The room erupted in applause. And Marcus Webb, teacher, truth-teller, survivor, felt something he hadn't felt in months. Not just hope, purpose. The kind that could move mountains. The kind that could change the world. 6 months later, Marcus stood at the gates of Stateville Correctional Facility. But this time, he wasn't arriving as an inmate. He was arriving as a teacher. The program had taken months to approve. Bureaucratic red tape, security clearances, endless meetings with prison administrators who were skeptical that outside influence would be beneficial. But Marcus had persisted, supported by the Webb Warriors, backed by David Chu's legal expertise, and eventually, reluctantly, the system had bent. The Stateville Education Partnership was born. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Marcus would return to the place that had tried to break him. He'd bring students from Douglas High, carefully selected, thoroughly prepared, supervised always, and together they would teach. Literature, history, writing, critical thinking, the subjects that had sustained Marcus through his darkest days. Grace stood beside him now, holding his hand. She'd insisted on coming to the first session. You don't have to do this, she'd said when he first proposed it. You don't owe that place anything. I'm not doing it for the place, Marcus had replied. I'm doing it for the men inside. Now, as they walked through security, Marcus voluntarily submitting to searches, showing ID, being processed, Grace squeezed his hand. I'm proud of you, she whispered, terrified, but proud. The library looked exactly as Marcus remembered. Same dusty shelves, same fluorescent lights, same worn tables where he'd taught men to read, to write, to believe in themselves again. But today it was transformed. 30 inmates sat waiting, dressed in their best, which meant clean orange jumpsuits, hair neatly cut, faces eager, and standing with them, nervous but determined, were 15 students from Douglas High. Alicia was there. So was James, who'd written a college essay about systemic racism that had gotten him into Harvard. So was Maria, who wanted to be a civil rights lawyer. Young people who understood that justice wasn't something you waited for. It was something you built. Connolly approached Marcus, hand extended. Welcome back, Mr. Webb, though I never thought I'd say that to someone who got out. Hebrew Marcus shook his hand warmly. How are they? Sebra, scared, hopeful. Half of them don't believe this is real. Shubber Marcus scanned the room and found the faces he was looking for. Javon was there, grinning so wide his face might split. He'd passed his GED 3 months ago and was now working on college prep. Beside him sat Diesel, who'd grown a beard and looked somehow softer, more at peace. But there were new faces, too. Younger men, older men, men who'd heard about what Marcus had done during his 6 weeks inside and wanted that for themselves. Marcus walked to the front of the room, and the noise died instantly. My name is Marcus Webb, he said. And 6 months ago, I sat where you're sitting. I wore what you're wearing. I felt what you're feeling. Forgotten, written off, invisible. Society looked at me and saw a convict. Nothing more. Brush. He paused, making eye contact with as many men as he could. But that's not who you are. You're students. You're fathers and sons and brothers. You're human beings with stories and potential and worth. And for the next 2 hours, twice a week, we're going to prove that together. Hebrew, he gestured to the Douglas students. These young people are here because they believe in second chances, because they believe education is a right, not a privilege, because they refuse to accept that where you are defines who you can become. Alicia stepped forward. We're not here to judge. We're here to learn with you, to share what we know and learn what you know, because everyone in this room has something to teach. For the next 2 hours, something magical happened. The room divided into small groups, each Douglas student paired with 2 or 3 inmates. Some worked on reading, some discussed current events, some analyzed poetry. Marcus moved between groups, offering guidance, asking questions, watching transformation happen in real time. He saw Javon helping a younger inmate sound out words from the autobiography of Malcolm X, the same book Marcus had given him 6 months ago. Saw the pride in Javon's face as he became the teacher instead of just the student. He saw Diesel in deep conversation with James about mass incarceration, asking thoughtful questions, challenging assumptions, engaging with ideas in ways that would have been impossible 6 months ago. He saw a 50-year-old white inmate named Morrison sitting with Maria, tears streaming down his face as he wrote a letter to a daughter he hadn't spoken to in 8 years. Maria was helping him find words for regret, for hope, for love that hadn't died despite years of absence. At the end of the session, no one wanted to leave. "Same time Thursday?" Javon asked hopefully. "Same time Thursday," Marcus confirmed. As the inmates filed out, Diesel hung back. He approached Marcus slowly, almost shy. "Mr. Webb, I need to tell you something. Okay? When you first came in, I wanted to break you. Wanted to make you like the rest of us, angry, bitter, defeated. Because if you could stay dignified, stay yourself, it made me look at everything I'd become, made me uncomfortable." Marcus nodded, saying nothing. "But you didn't break. And watching you, it changed me. Made me realize I could choose who I want to be, even in here. So I've been making different choices. Stopped the gang stuff. Started actually using my time to improve instead of just survive." Diesel's voice cracked. "My sister visited last month. First time in 2 years. Lighter. She asked what changed, and I told her about you. About the class. About choosing dignity. I'm proud of you," Marcus said. "I got 8 more years in here, Mr. Webb. But when I get out, I want to be someone worth knowing. Someone my sister can be proud of. You showed me that's possible." They shook hands. Then Diesel did something unexpected. He hugged Marcus. A brief, fierce embrace that said everything words couldn't. When he pulled away, there were tears in his eyes. "Thank you for not giving up on us." Outside, in the parking lot, the Douglas students were buzzing with energy and emotion. "That was incredible," James said. "I've read about mass incarceration, studied the statistics, but meeting actual people inside, it's different. They're not statistics. They're just people who made mistakes or got failed by the system." Maria was crying quietly. "Morrison told me about his daughter, about how he was drunk when he drove and hit another car and killed someone. He's been carrying that guilt for 8 years. And he actually asked me, if I thought he could ever be forgiven. What do I say to that?" Marcus put his hand on her shoulder. "You say what you believe, but remember, forgiveness isn't about erasing what happened. It's about choosing not to let the past define the future. That man can't bring back the person he killed, but he can spend the rest of his life trying to become someone who honors that loss by being better." "Is that enough?" Maria asked. "All any of us can do," Marcus said. "Try to be better than we were yesterday." Alicia approached, looking thoughtful. "Mr. Webb, this program, it's just the beginning, isn't it? This could expand to other prisons, other schools. This could become a movement." Marcus smiled. "That's exactly what it should become. But it doesn't need me to lead it. You've already proven you can create change. The Web Warriors can become something bigger than me, bigger than any one person." "But we need you," Alicia protested. "No," Marcus said gently. "You need the principles I taught you. Question everything. Fight injustice. Never accept that things have to stay broken. You already know how to do that. Now teach others." That evening, Marcus sat in his living room with Grace, Maya, and Jasmine. They'd started a family tradition. Sunday dinners where everyone had to share one good thing and one hard thing from the week. "Good thing," Maya said. "I got an A on my math test. Hard thing, someone at school said you went to jail because you're a bad person." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice calm. "What did you say?" "I said my dad is the best person I know, and sometimes good people have bad things happen to them, and that doesn't make them bad." Marcus pulled her close. "That's exactly right, baby girl." Jasmine went next. "Good thing, I got accepted to Northwestern. Hard thing." She paused. "Hard thing is I feel guilty being happy when so many people don't get those opportunities, like the men we met at Stateville." "Don't feel guilty," Marcus said. "Feel responsible. You got opportunities because of luck, being born to parents who valued education, in a community with resources. But that luck comes with responsibility, to use what you have to help others. to remember that intelligence and potential aren't evenly distributed, but opportunity should be. Grace smiled at her daughter. Your father's right. Your acceptance isn't taking something from someone else. It's a chance to become someone who opens doors for others. Grace shared next, then Marcus. His good thing was the program at Stateville. His hard thing was harder to articulate. I still dream about Terrence, he said quietly. Still wake up angry that he's gone, that Deshaun Porter walks free, that the system failed him completely. Have you thought about reaching out to Terrence's mother? Grace asked gently. Marcus nodded. But I don't know what to say. How do you apologize for not being able to save someone's child? You don't apologize, Grace said. You tell her what Terrence's life meant, how it changed you, how it's still changing the world through the work you're doing. The next day, Marcus drove to the south side. He parked outside a small house with peeling paint and a chain-link fence. He'd been here once before, the week after Terrence died, but he barely remembered it through the haze of grief. Terrence's mother, Denise Williams, answered the door. She was thinner than Marcus remembered, older, worn down by loss. Mr. Webb, she said, surprise and something else, pain maybe or anger, crossing her face. Mrs. Williams, I know I should have come sooner. Abraki, come in, she said. The house was small but immaculate. Photos of Terrence covered every surface, baby pictures, school photos, his Northwestern acceptance letter framed on the wall. They sat in awkward silence for a moment. I'm sorry, Marcus said finally. I'm so sorry I couldn't save him. I'm sorry that confronting Deshaun led to my arrest instead of his. I'm sorry the system failed your son and failed you and— Stop, Denise said. Her voice was firm but not unkind. Mr. Webb, you didn't fail my son. You were the only person who saw him, really saw him. You believed in him when no one else did. You gave him a future. But he didn't get to live that future. No, he didn't. And that's not your fault. That's Deshaun Porter's fault. That's the system's fault. That's America's fault for creating neighborhoods where guns are easier to get than opportunities. She wiped her eyes. But the time Terrence had with you, those years you mentored him, those were good years. Years where he felt valued. You gave him that. Marcus couldn't stop the tears. He was remarkable. He would have changed the world. He still is, Denise said. She pulled out a folder. Inside were newspaper clippings about Marcus's case, about the Webb Warriors, about the Stateville program. You think I haven't been following what you're doing? You think I don't see my son's legacy in all of this? Marcus looked at her, confused. Terrence believed education could save lives, Denise continued. He wrote about it in his college essay. And now you're living that belief. You're teaching men who never had a Terrence in their lives. You're showing them that they matter. That's my son's legacy, Mr. Webb. That's how he's still changing the world. She reached across and took Marcus's hand. Don't apologize to me. Thank you. Thank you for loving my son. For fighting for him. For making sure his death meant something. They sat together for an hour, sharing memories of Terrence. His smile, his questions, his fierce belief that the world could be better. When Marcus left, he felt lighter. Not healed. He might never be fully healed, but whole in a way he hadn't been since Terrence's death. The anger was still there. The grief was still there. But so was purpose. So was hope. 3 months later, Marcus received a letter at school. It was from the parole board. Diesel was being released early for good behavior and exceptional participation in educational programs. He had a job lined up at his sister's restaurant. He had a plan, and he wanted Marcus to be there when he walked out. On a cold November morning, Marcus stood outside Stateville with Diesel's sister, a young woman named Keisha, who looked at him with grateful tears. Thank you, she said. Thank you for giving me my brother back. Not the angry, violent man who went in, but someone I recognize, someone I can be proud of. The gates opened. Diesel walked out wearing civilian clothes. Jeans and a jacket that looked new. He stopped when he saw them, overwhelmed. Keisha ran to him and they embraced for a long time. Then Diesel approached Marcus. I didn't think you'd come. Of course I came. You did the work. You earned this. Because you showed me how. showed me I was worth something more than my worst mistakes. Diesel's voice was thick with emotion. Mr. Webb, I'm going to make you proud. I'm going to be someone worth knowing, I promise you that. Berkey, you already are, Marcus said. They stood there in the morning light, a reformed bully, a wronged teacher, and a sister who'd never given up hope. And Marcus thought about redemption. Real redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about choosing differently in the present. It was about growth, not perfection, about becoming someone your past self wouldn't recognize. Diesel had done that. Marcus had done that. And somewhere Marcus believed Terrence was watching and smiling. That night, Marcus wrote in the journal Grace had given him after his release. 6 months ago, I was lying in a cell, stripped of everything I thought defined me. My freedom, my reputation, my identity. But I was wrong about what defined me. I'm not defined by what was taken from me. I'm defined by what I chose to do when everything was taken. I chose dignity. I chose teaching. I chose to believe that even in the darkest place, light could still break through. Terrence is gone. That will always be a wound. But his life meant something. His death meant something. It exposed corruption. It sparked a movement. It changed me and dozens of young people who refuse to accept injustice. I've learned that redemption isn't about revenge. It's not about making people pay for what they did to you. It's about refusing to let what they did to you change who you are. I went to prison Marcus Webb teacher. I came out Marcus Webb teacher, and I will spend the rest of my life teaching people that they are more than their circumstances, more than their mistakes, more than what the world tells them they are. That's my redemption. That's my truth. That's how I honor Terrence's memory. He closed the journal and looked out the window at the Chicago skyline, lit up against the night sky. Tomorrow he'd go back to Douglas High. He'd teach his classes. He'd mentor students who needed to believe in themselves. He'd return to Stateville and help men reclaim their humanity. He'd live the life Terrence never got to live, and he'd do it with grace, with dignity, with the stubborn, beautiful belief that one person could still make a difference. That day, Marcus Webb didn't fight for revenge. He stood for truth, and truth, in the end, was enough.